movements to defund the police have swept across America. What does that phrase mean to you? And would you cut funding in the Boston Police Department budget in 2023 if elected?
We need deep changes to our police department and to our system of public safety in Boston. We have seen, unfortunately, time and again, our department in the news, whether it is for cases of misconduct that did not face accountability, or overtime fraud, or other incidents that certain by no means represent the entirety of our department, but show very important flags as to the depth of change that is needed across the structure and the culture of our department. I believe that we need to invest more in the ecosystem of public safety and public health. But when we talk about our departments in a very siloed way, that leads to a skewed conversation about what we're trying to achieve. Community advocates are absolutely right and have been saying for decades that we need more accountability. We need more connection and trust with community. We need to deliver the services that residents are actually seeking in those moments of crisis when they reach out. And we're not meeting those benchmarks, in my mind, adequately in this moment. To really reach and connect to our residents, we have to be investing in a public health-led approach to public safety. I know what it feels like to be standing with a family member, with my mom, in the depths of an episode of mental illness, and to have the police called, and to be standing in terror, worried about how that interaction might go with an armed officer there, to be begging for her to be sent to the hospital rather than the police station. And I've had conversations with many of our officers who also share concerns about whether we are meeting crisis response calls with the right types of training and services. In some precincts, the vast majority of 911 calls that come in are for situations where our officers are not best equipped to respond, whether it is mental illness, whether it is homelessness, substance use, and overdoses. So much of our resources are being drawn in this way when we should be responding with public health resources. Cities that have adopted this model have not only better served their residents, but have seen cost efficiencies because they're actually providing what's needed in that moment, freeing up policing resources to the places where we actually do need and are stretched thin. And so for me, there are a couple big pieces to the conversation about public safety and policing reform in particular. We need to focus on crisis response and having support for public health within that. The places where we are shifting away from armed law enforcement to a community de-escalation trained force that is right up there and building on this model. The second is we need to ensure that we're getting overtime costs under control. This is a line item that has been ballooning past the growth of other line items within the city budget. It is affecting the funding that is available for other very important community needs. And it is deeply tied to provisions within the police contract that need to be renegotiated. We also need to ensure accountability, again, tied to the contract. As of just about a month ago, we are more than a year with an expired bargaining agreement for the Boston Police. So the next mayor will have the very important tasks of choosing and appointing a new leader for the department to partner on these important reforms, as well as renegotiating a contract that needs to embed transparency, accountability, and community trust into how we move forward as a city.
You know, I think there is a big push to reimagine policing all across our nation. And for me, I am just later on today, this afternoon, and hope you will tune in. We are announcing a pilot on how to do just that, beginning with the response to crises, particularly mental health response. And so, you know, we can free up police officers to focus on what is important, and that is violent crime. When it comes to a public health issue, like a mental health an episode or challenge, I would rather see mental health professionals respond to that call. And so I think there are a number of people all across the city of Boston, as well as our country, who see this as an opportunity to reimagine police, to make sure that resources are going where they are most needed. And when it comes to public health, we need a public health response. When it comes to violent crime, we need a public safety response.
Okay.
And there is so much more. I know we're very limited on our responses, but there's so much more that goes into that. There's racial equity training. There is making sure that we're dealing with accountability and transparency. All of those things are underway and are priorities for me in my administration.
My plan is the most comprehensive plan of any candidate in this race. And it's very specific. And I wanted to provide specifics because I wanted folks to know that when I put forth plans and ideas, I want folks to know that they're practical and they can happen. My goal is to transform our city's response to public safety. So it's not just, of course, pushing for a reduction in crime and then sort of, just for a temporary period of time. It's really driving at how do we eradicate violence in the city of Boston? And to do that, it's twofold. One, my plan says, yes, we absolutely can make sure every single community and neighborhood is safe and has an adequate number of officers to respond to the incidents of crime or calls that they get within a certain district. And to make that happen, I'm pushing our department to restructure certain specialized units to send them back to the districts so that there are a number of adequate officers to respond to calls they get. And why is that important and necessary? The police budget is absolutely not sustainable. And the police department itself has said the same. It's a $400 million budget with a $70 million overtime budget that keeps going up. And coming out of COVID, we're going to have to be responsible in our financing. So we're going to have to restructure our department. We can do that while ensuring adequate coverage and reining in an unsustainable budget. And then what do we do with those savings that we see? We not only reduce that overtime budget line item, we can redirect those dollars to the root causes of violence. We don't need another report from the Department of Justice to say that's just as important in order to reduce violence and to eventually eradicate it. And so I would invest those dollars in moving people out of poverty, in jobs and opportunity, of course, as well as mental health, which we do not invest enough resources in, substance use disorder, and other things that we're seeing in the city of Boston. And this is all possible. My plan has been vetted by officers who are currently in the department, retired officers, as well as folks in the community.
Jim, defund the police is, I think, not helpful. We need a vision for how we transform policing. We need a vision that starts with a call to have the best police department and the best policing in the country. One that is transparent, one that holds police officers accountable for any transgressions, for making sure that policing is fair, for making sure that our practices are equitable. We need to be able to get reports from the police when we ask for it. We need to make sure that we can stand up the civil review board that's made up of residents to help review police investigations and make sure that it's fair and transparent. There's a lot of work that we need to do with policing to make sure that Boston continues to move into the age where police and policing can be fair, and that Black men like me don't have to leave my house in fear, both of myself and my safety, or my child's safety as young Black boys leaving my house. But that doesn't mean defunding the police. In fact, the cut to police budget that we saw this year is going to end up in the same way as the cut last year to police budget. We're going to still need policing, and we're going to call on policing. And so we this year we cut, I believe the city cut overtime. We cut overtime at a time when the police is understaffed. There is not enough police officers in the department. We saw it firsthand as we were monitoring the level of police officers during the COVID pandemic. When we were a city of 600,000 residents, we had about 2,400 police officers on the streets almost every day. Today, as a city of about 750,000 residents, we have about 1,600 to 1,800 police officers on the streets almost every day. And that's just not enough. And if you don't have enough police officers, you're going to need more overtime by each individual police officers because there are just more needs in our city. We need to staff up the police. And when we staff up the police, we need to make sure it's a diverse group of new police officers that are coming in, and that the entire force is trained for sensitivity, for de-escalation, and around anti-racist policies that we need to adopt in the force and implement. So we need a new vision for police that's positive and not about defunding, but on making sure that the outcomes are right and just for everyone.
And when I think about the defund movement, it's just absolute nonsense to be talking in those terms and using those phrases. Like education, when I think about the responsibility I have to lead this city as mayor of this city, when I think about the tasks and the commitment I need to have in this city, it's certainly leading on education and supporting the Boston Public Schools. It's leading on public transportation and making sure that those public goods are high quality goods and good for the public. And public safety falls in line with one of the core responsibilities of leading this city. Every community should be free of violence. Every community should feel safe to go out for an evening walk, for a grandmother to sit on her porch, for a child to play at the playground, for a kid to come to and from school. Every community deserves that safety. And when we think about the work that we need to do as a city to fulfill that promise of public safety, we need to do it in partnership with our Boston Police Department, with our community members, with our nonprofit-based organizations that are doing work around violence prevention. And Boston has been the leader, has been the model in community policing, but that certificate is outdated. We received that acknowledgement, that recognition under the Obama administration. And it's so important that we continue to fulfill that promise of community policing and make sure that we are continuing to invest in community policing, investing in the work of crime prevention and violence prevention, and investing in the work around solving unsolved homicides in particular. Too many families today do not know what happened to their loved ones. We need to continue to do that work and certainly do it in partnership with our police officers, with our community members, with our families who continue to feel that pain and that trauma, and also do the work in partnership with organizations who are doing trauma response, who are helping, respond to some of the symptoms of poverty and the challenges that violence has brought to too many of our neighborhoods. For me, it's about investing in appropriate policing, investing in the true notion and truly celebrate the concept of community policing and making sure that every day we are committed to that work, that we are focused on that work, and that community and police are at the table together doing that work. As mayor, I will bring those different facets of our city, of our communities together to make sure that we are fulfilling the goals of community policing every single day in every one of our neighborhoods for every one of our residents.